Hi friends, here to just chat with you today about decentralized technologies and a couple of the core principles. So there are three things that you're going to hear people talk a lot about when it comes to blockchain technology. The first is transparency. So the big thing that this technology can afford us is the fact that we can trace everything back to its origins. The way that the blocks actually work is that each block that follows has the code of the entire block that's preceded it embedded in it. So you can think about this like there was a game that we played when we were kids where one person would go around, we'd go around the fire and say, my mom went to the store today and she bought 2 apples. And then the next person would say, my mom went to the store today and she bought 2 apples and a carrot. And then the third person would say both 2 apples, a carrot, and then another item. This is exactly how blockchain technology works. So all of the information that's being coded into the chain gets repeated, and everybody in the system has to agree that that's the record that everyone has. So this increases transparency in a lot of ways because it allows us to see everything that's going on and all transactions at all times. This doesn't mean that everyone can see what you're doing, although it does, the way that the Bitcoin blockchain works is that your address is a very long string of digits. So it doesn't say Shannon Ewing sent this much money to her sister. Unlike, Venmo can be very public that way. This is anonymized. So you will have a very long string of digits that unless somebody already has that address, it's much like the address in front of your house. So if somebody has that address, they can then go through and see all the transactions. They can see what has come in and out of that mailbox, but they can never get to the back end. They can never unlock the mailbox. They can never get to its contents, but they can see what has come in and what has gone out. Again, not your name, but your address is more public. So this transparency level is really important because when you think about things like supply chains, we talk a lot today about what goes on in California is a great example. The estimates right now are that 55% of the fish that you order in a restaurant is not the species that you ordered. What ends up on your plate is very different than what came out of the ocean. And this isn't entirely because of nefarious reasons. It's not like people are trying to fool you. Some might be, but more often than not, it's that there are just so many hands that touch that fish from the time it leaves the ocean to the time that it lands in the restaurant that it actually the whole system is way too opaque. We don't know what happened. We don't have good records. These things are being tracked through carbonated paper records, through Excel spreadsheets. All of those things are very changeable. And with blockchain, the next core principle that's very important is immutability, which is a fancy way of saying it's unhackable, it's not changeable. So you take the transparency layer of everything being visible and you add the layer of nothing being able to be altered. And now you have a very solid record of what's gone on from the entire life cycle of whatever the product is, whatever transactions you're looking to track. Nothing can be falsified. So the way that this technology works to make it unhackable is through decentralization, which we talk about a lot here. You can think about it like the Equifax hack that we've seen over the last few years. We had a really big one a few years ago, and we've seen a lot of data privacy breaches since then. That is essentially a giant castle that has a ton of treasure in it. And it's really well guarded. There are moats and there are guards and there are crocodiles in the moats, and it's really hard to get into that castle, but that centralized database is holding so much valuable information, which is like treasure, that it really motivates a lot of hackers to try to get in there because the reward is so great. So even though it looks impossible, people are going to continue trying to get in through some back door. They're going to try to tunnel in. They are going to try to climb a wall. They're going to try to get inside. And even the most robust systems in the world have a really hard time making sure that they stay completely impenetrable. What happens if we take that treasure and we distribute it across, say, 10,000 homes in a village rather than being in one castle, is now you would have to have a hacker that could somehow simultaneously unlock all 10,000 of those doors with 10,000 different keys. Because we have taken that data up, we have spread it out across all the nodes in the network, and now they all have a copy. So if you were going to try to get in there and take that, you would have to break into all of them at the same time. This is really, really hard to do. It's not impossible, and we'll talk about how that could happen in another video. But just know that in the 10 years that the Bitcoin blockchain has been around, lots and lots and lots of people have tried to hack it, and it hasn't been done yet. So the way that decentralizing this data adds layers of security, and the way that the chains replicate their messages and the information that they're passing from one block to another, make it so that this is really impenetrable. It's super, super secure. And then the final layer of blockchain databases is decentralization, which you're going to hear me say all the time, because it's essentially, it's not only a practical aspect of blockchain technology, but it's also kind of an ethos, and it has actually become a blockchain, the community has created a decentralist movement. So even if you don't care about blockchain technology itself, if you don't like Bitcoin, if you have any beef with tokenized projects or cryptocurrencies, the idea of decentralization is kind of like the umbrella concept that wraps all of those things together. And that idea is that things are more robust, systems are stronger when we break them into smaller components. So you can think about this as like a national government. Where I'm from in the US, we have one very large government structure that encompasses so many different regions and so many disparate communities. And it makes it really slow. It makes it really hard to get information in and out. It makes it really slow to respond. And then when you think about breaking that back down, you get the states and you get the cities and the regions underneath that. And those are all much faster. They're much more responsive. So one of the things that the decentralist movement really believes is that we can be faster, more resilient, more equitable, better responsive to our local needs, and have more agency if we have a decentralized system, so that we have smaller and smaller components that you can impact a smaller community. And there's a woman named Toni Lane Casserly who was a big activist in our space who passed away recently, and she would speak about our role in these bigger systems. And a question that she asked that I really appreciated was, think about the last time that you voted, that you think that you actually impacted the outcome of the vote. That's what happens when we have big centralized authority, is that our voices get lost, our agency gets lost, and we have a big gap between us and the system that is now impacting us. So there are a million ways that I could talk about why decentralization is important, but just specifically for blockchains, it's very important because having that data spread out across the nodes is going to make the system more resilient and more secure. But also thinking about the way that decentralization actually adds voice. It adds your ability to impact change. It adds you as a really thriving and active member of whatever community you're taking part in. And it doesn't have to be local. You could have groups on Facebook or decentralized systems where you have small pockets of people all over the world interacting with one another. And these are ways that communities can come together in an unorganized but self-organized fashion. So these are the three tenets of blockchain technology. Again, it is transparency, immutability or unhackability, and decentralization. Those are the core concepts that you're going to hear me and other speakers refer to again and again in the videos on this site. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, because this can be a little weird. The language is a little funny to get used to, and we're here to answer any questions that you have. So I'm super excited to talk about this in greater detail, and enjoy the next video.